Imagine a room frozen in 1987, a half-eaten dinner on the table, a radio playing a song that has long since faded from the charts, and a bloodstain on the carpet that has turned from crimson to a dull, dusty brown. For 35 years, this room and the secret it held remained locked behind yellow police tape that had turned brittle with age. The file was buried under a mountain of unsolved tragedies, labeled cold, no witnesses, no DNA, no hope. The killer thought they had committed the perfect crime, whispered away into the shadows of history. But time is a fickle thing. It doesn't just heal wounds. Sometimes it rots away the lies we tell to hide our sins. In a small town where everyone knows everyone's name, a single forgotten cardboard box in a damp basement was about to be opened, and inside? A piece of evidence so chilling, so impossible, that it didn't just reopen the case, it screamed the killer's name from the grave. Welcome to Midnight Crime Vault. Tonight, we go into the darkness of a case that was almost forgotten, until the past decided to fight back. The year was 1987. The place was Oak Haven, a town so peaceful that people left their front doors unlocked and their car keys in the ignition. It was the kind of place where the biggest news was usually the weather or the high school football scores. Among the residents was 22-year-old Elena Vance. Elena was the heart of Oak Haven, a nursing student with a laugh that could brighten the gloomiest hospital ward. She was only weeks away from graduation. She lived alone in a small white picket fence cottage on the edge of the woods. On the night of November 12th, the first snow of the season began to fall. It was beautiful, silent, and deadly. Elena had just finished a double shift and called her mother at 8 p.m. to say she was heating up some soup and heading to bed. That was the last time anyone heard her voice. The next morning, the silence in Oak Haven was shattered. When Elena didn't show up for her clinicals, her best friend, Sarah, drove to the cottage. The front door was slightly ajar. A light dusting of snow had blown into the entryway. Inside, the house was eerily still. The soup pot was still on the stove, the liquid inside cold and congealed. In the living room, a single lamp was knocked over, its bulb flickering like a dying heartbeat. And there, near the hallway leading to the bedroom, lay Elena. There were no signs of a struggle in the kitchen, but the hallway told a different story. Elena had been strangled. The intruder had entered through a window that had been meticulously pried open, not smashed, but manipulated by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The police were baffled. In a town with 0 homicides in a decade, the lead detective Miller found himself staring at a void. There were no fingerprints that didn't belong to Elena or Sarah. There was no forced entry that suggested a frantic burglar. There was only the cold, biting wind of the woods. The investigation focused on the men in her life. There was Mark, the ex-boyfriend who had been seen arguing with her 2 weeks prior. He had an alibi. He was at a bar 3 towns over, seen by dozens. There was Mr. Henderson, the quiet neighbor who spent too much time watching the birds from his porch. But search warrants yielded nothing. No trophies, no blood, no motive. Months turned into years. The Oak Haven Angel, as the papers called her, became a cautionary tale. Her mother kept the house exactly as it was for a decade, waiting for a daughter who would never walk through the door, before finally passing away from a broken heart. The house was sold, the files were moved to the basement of the county courthouse, and the name Elena Vance began to disappear from the collective memory of the town. Decades passed. The world moved from analog to digital. The detectives who worked the case retired and took their secrets to the grave. The 90s bled into the 2000s and the 2000s into the 2020s. The case was effectively dead. But in 2023, a massive flood hit the county archives. Thousands of boxes were soaked, forcing a group of young interns to move the files to a dry facility. One intern, a criminal justice student named Leo, dropped a waterlogged box labeled Vance 87. As the contents spilled out, he noticed something strange. Taped to the very bottom of the box, hidden under the original police reports, was a small, sealed plastic bag that had never been entered into the official evidence log. Inside that bag was a single, rusted brass key and a handwritten note on a scrap of diner napkin that read, "I saw the shadow in the woods." He wasn't a stranger. This was the moment the silence ended. Leo brought the bag to the modern cold case unit. Using 21st century forensic technology, they didn't just look at the key, they looked at the napkin. Under specialized light, they found a faint, invisible thumbprint on the corner of the paper. This wasn't DNA, but it was a bridge to the past. They ran the print through a FIS, the national database that didn't exist in 1987. Within seconds, a name popped up. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't Henderson. It was a man named Thomas Reed, who at the time of the murder was a rookie police officer in the neighboring precinct. The investigation took a terrifying turn. If Reed was the killer, he had used his badge to mask his movements. He knew exactly how to enter a house without leaving a trace. He knew which evidence to lose during the initial chaos. But why the key? The detectives tracked down Reed, now a 65-year-old retired security consultant living in a gated community in Florida. When they knocked on his door, they didn't lead with questions about Elena. They showed him the key. His face didn't just go pale, it went gray. It turned out the key belonged to a local hunting cabin that had been torn down in the 90s. Forensic teams went to the site where the cabin once stood. Using ground-penetrating radar, they found a metallic box buried 3 feet under the soil. Inside were the trophies Reed had kept: Elena's nursing school ID, her missing earring, and a diary she had kept. The final entry in the diary, dated November 12, 1987. Reed, the officer who pulled me over for my broken tail light, keeps driving past my house. He says he's just checking on me, but his eyes make me feel like I'm already dead. The new evidence wasn't just a physical object. It was the realization that the monster was the one who was supposed to be the hero. Reed had been the first on the scene that night, pretending to assist Miller. He had planted the napkin and the key in the evidence box himself as a sick game of catch me if you can, betting that the bureaucracy of the small-town police force would swallow it whole, and it almost did. For 35 years, he lived a life of luxury and respect while Elena's memory faded. In the courtroom, Reed remained stone-faced until the moment they played a digital reconstruction of the crime scene, using modern physics to prove the angle of the strangulation matched his height and grip strength perfectly. The jury didn't even need 2 hours. He was sentenced to life without parole. But as the gavel came down, the story didn't truly end. During the post-conviction inventory of Reed's belongings, investigators found more keys, 12 of them, to be exact. Each one was labeled with a date and a set of initials. These initials spanned 4 different states and 30 years of service in law enforcement. The horror of the Oak Haven Angel was not an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a predatory cycle that had operated in the shadows of the law for 3 decades. The investigators began a grueling process of tracing these keys back to their locks. One key led to a locker in a bus station in Ohio that had been abandoned since 1994. Inside, they found a collection of Polaroids of innocent women walking to their cars, sitting in cafes or locking their front doors. It was a catalog of stalking. Another key led to a safe deposit box in a bank that had changed names 3 times. Inside that box was a gold watch that belonged to a missing schoolteacher from 2002. The scope of the case exploded. What started as a forgotten file in a flooded basement became a national task force operation. The public was outraged. How could a man with a badge operate with such impunity for so long? The answer lay in the blue wall of silence and the lack of centralized databases in the pre-internet era. Reed had moved from precinct to precinct, always staying one step ahead of the rumors, always using his authority to shut down anyone who looked too closely. He was a master of the administrative disappearance, moving files, mislabeling evidence, and helping fellow officers with their heavy workloads just to gain access to the archives. In prison, Reed finally broke his silence. In a series of recorded interviews that have never been fully released to the public, he spoke about the high of the hunt. He described his victims not as people, but as puzzles to be solved. He admitted that he chose Elena Vance because she was too perfect, and he wanted to see if he could break the spirit of Oak Haven. He felt invincible. He told the lead investigator, "I didn't lose because I was sloppy. I lost because the water rose." You can't fight the weather. His arrogance was his only regret. He didn't feel remorse for the lives he ended. He only felt cheated by a flood that exposed his hidden trophies. The families of the other potential victims are still waiting for answers. Each of those 12 keys represents a family that has spent years wondering why their loved one never came home. The task force is currently working through DNA samples found on the items in Reed's metallic box, matching them against Jane Doe's found across the country. The Oak Haven cottage where Elena died was eventually demolished. Today, it is a small memorial park. A single white stone stands where the front door used to be, engraved with her name and the words, "The truth cannot be buried." This case reminds us that justice doesn't have an expiration date. It waits in the damp basements, in the waterlogged boxes, and in the conscience of the few who refuse to let a name die. Elena Vance is no longer just a cold file. She is a testament to the fact that the truth is a living thing and eventually it always breathes. It serves as a haunting reminder that the people we trust to protect us are sometimes the ones we should fear the most. The shadows in the woods aren't always strangers. Sometimes they wear a uniform and carry a flashlight, searching for the very evidence they help to hide. As we close this vault tonight, we are left with a chilling realization. How many other Vance 87 boxes are sitting in flooded basements or dusty attics right now? How many predators have retired with their secrets, thinking they've won? The technology of tomorrow is the nightmare of the criminals of yesterday. Every day, the gap between the perfect crime and the prison cell gets smaller. The past is never truly dead. It's just waiting for someone to drop the box. What do you think about Thomas Reed? Was he a master manipulator, or was the system simply too broken to catch him? Could there be more boxes waiting in that basement with names we haven't heard in decades? And perhaps most disturbingly, how many other Officer Reeds are still out there, hiding behind the badge? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We read every single one of them, and your insights often lead us to our next case. If you found this journey into the vault chilling and want to support our mission to bring light to forgotten cases, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Every like and share helps ensure that names like Elena Vance are never forgotten again. This is Midnight Crime Vault, signing off. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember the darkness always has a story to tell. Good night.